the home to reflect who we are, for ourselves, for our family, and to the people we invite into our homes. Also reflecting who we want to be and how we want to feel. And the feeling this year was this feeling of help me deal with the outside world. So it's the simplest idea. It's coming back to the core idea of interior decoration, which is creating a welcoming home for yourself and for your family and for the people that you invite into that home to celebrate whatever you're doing in that moment. Now, how does that relate to colours? Well, very simply, if you start asking people about what is a good colour for a home, the majority of people will come to what are termed warm colours. Browns, reds, yellows, oranges, these kind of colours, because they have this effect on us of making us feel warm and comfortable and nice and relaxed. Now, it's not everybody does that, but that's the general sense that when you're talking about this sort of feeling, you'll go to warm colours. And clearly we've seen a move to warm colours in the trends this year to reflect that. But also in the last few years, we've had people wanting to think about interesting colours. Now, what's an interesting colour? An interesting colour is typically something that's a little bit unusual. It might be in between two primary colours, so it's just a little bit different. Or it may have certain interesting characteristics, like being a bit more metallic, or in this case, we'll show you a colour that kind of changes depending on what you put it next to and what you do with it. So the combination for us was to come to a colour that represented the core idea, reflected the warm colours of a home and the kind of materials you might see in that warm home, particularly thinking about wood and leather and things like this. It was also a little bit interesting as well. And that's what creates the colour of the year for 2018. What is it? So actually most people when they look at this will say it's kind of brown. But if you look closely and carefully, you'll find it's not. It's actually a pink grey is what the colour is. It's a combination between the two colours. But it looks to us typically that kind of a little bit of a browny colour, and representing the idea that it's a little bit like the colours of wood and leather, and it's about the home, creates the name Heartwood for the colour of the year. And what you'll find is if you put it next to, for example, a very dark colour, like a dark brown, then you tend to see its kind of pink nature coming out. If you put it next to a light colour, like a neutral, you'll see the more kind of browny flavour of it coming out. So you can see it in combination with things, which makes it an interesting colour to use in interior design space. So it's not just about the colour, it's always about how the colour works with other colours. So as usual in other years, it's about giving to our consumers and to our professional customers some ideas about how to use this colour in different ways. Now, most of our material this year refers to the home because that's what the theme is, but it's also applicable to other areas as well. So our first palette of colours is just built around the core idea of the colour of the year, what we call the Heartwood home or the welcoming home. And what would that look like? Well, in the core palette, what we'd have done is taken that colour and then combine it with, if you like, the most kind of obvious things to make this welcoming home palette. So what will you see here? You'll see it paired with materials that kind of make sense, like leather, like marble, like copper, like dark woods. And in terms of the colour spectrum, you see some inky blues here and some deep colours that really build around Heartwood as a colour to create what, when most people look at, will say, okay, that looks like a pretty welcoming kind of home or confident kind of home, the way it is. Now, when you look at the materials, you'll see the colour codes on things. So the way that we work as a company is that we want you to be able to choose any colour in any product. So when any of our customers will go into any of the shops, they can use that colour code and say, I want this code, but I can have it in a Dulux Weather Shield or in a Dulux Supercover or a Dulux Velvet Touch. You can have that colour, depending on what you want the product to do. So in this case, we'll just focus on the colours and the colour codes, but just remember, it's sort of true for all of the products. Also, all of this photographic material is provided downloadable for our customers to be able to use with their customers or in any way that they like. And in each of the pictures, it tells you which colours are in there, right? So you can see the way the palettes work together. There are some exterior shots in there as well, using in this case the Heartwood palette here to show for exterior colours. But a lot of the imagery, as you can see, is interiors. So that's the, if you like, the core palette. But maybe that's not for everybody, because in reality, people are different. Not everyone's exactly the same. So we want to build a few different versions of this, around here. So that's what we've done. And we can think about it in terms of a bit the way that people are a little bit different. So for those of you who know a bit about psychology, you can think about people being a bit more introverted or a bit more extroverted. You can think about people very much focusing on the individual or on the we, in this case the family. And so we built a few palettes for different feelings like that. And that's a good way to understand them. So we can think about one version of this which is even more introverted, right? So even from this palette, we're trying to create something even more comfortable and cozy and that it wraps you around. It's a little bit individualistic because you're trying to protect yourself. And we find when people focus very much on this, they also think very carefully about the kind of materials they're using, the quality of the materials that are there. It can be very thoughtful and kind of conscientious. We call this the warm-hearted persona to give it a name. And this is for someone who's trying to create, if you like, this really, really comforting home. So take what we just showed and make it even more comforting. And how would you do that? Here's an example coming up, and again, it's in the materials of how you might do that. It still has Heartwood as the main colour, but we've done a few different things to this kind of setting. First of all, change some of the materials. So what you'll see here is things like velvets and silks, which are the most sort of both opulent plus the most comforting of the kind of materials that are there. So you'll see that change. You'll see some even earthier colours, like this terracotta clay colour that's being used on the wall here, or that deep scarlet colour for some of the soft furnishings and fittings around the room, to really bring it even more into a comforting space. We do think in this one you can go a bit too far, so we've offset this with a bit of blush pink to make sure it doesn't get too deep, and still remains a little bit of excitement in the palette. But that's a second way to look at it. But maybe that's not for you. Maybe you don't want quite to be that comforting. You want to be a bit more open. So here we can think about a persona that's a little bit more outgoing. Particularly, I want my welcoming home, but I want a welcoming home to bring people into my home, to create an environment that's very inclusive, both for the family and for friends, and therefore feels a bit more optimistic, a bit collaborative. And so we call that the open-hearted persona. And how would you do that? How would you work with this kind of idea to create what we might call an inviting kind of home? Well, again, you start with the Heartwood colour, but then you do some different things to it. And you see what a difference it can make. So here again, change the materials. Here much more cotton and linen, which are much lighter materials, so they create not quite such a heavy feel for the room, but a bit more of an open feeling for the room. Brought in some lighter blues and some sea green type colours. And as usual, greens and blues bring in an open sense to most rooms when you use it, reflecting the sky and the sea and this kind of idea. One of the good things about most colours that sit in the warm spectrum, and certainly Heartwood, is it works very well with different parts of the palette. And I'll show you that at the end as well, so you can see that. But this is how it would look if you did that. Same base colour, still a welcoming home, but this time opening it up and making it more inviting, collaborative kind of feeling into the space. Then we did one more. What about if you're even more outgoing? So one thing is shutting yourself off from the world. The other is saying, well, actually, I'm going to be connected to the world on my terms, not on your terms. So I'm willing to connect with the world, but I want to do it in a controlled way, because I'm extrovert, I'm outgoing, I'm curious, I'm adventurous, but I want to do it in a sort of calm way, in a way that works for me. And we call that the light-hearted persona, and it's about creating a kind of playful home. It does separate you from the world, but it interacts with it, and therefore we've brought in, of course, more vibrant colours into this kind of palette, but not only vibrant colours. you'll see a lot of the materials are very neutral in the fabric sense, or even just bare, because that brings the colours to play on the walls and other places, but also how to use graphic elements. So this does have some vibrant colours in it, some golds, some yellow tinted greens. But actually when you look at the pictures, they don't look so vibrant. That's one of the things that Heartwood does. It kind of cools down some of the brighter colours when you put it next to it. And that's a good thing in a home, because normally you want something that isn't so in your face all of the time. You want something a bit less. But the graphic elements help to bring out the playful nature of this particular palette. And you see lots more colours in this one to be able to do that. And you can still use very bold colours, like the yellow here that you see on the door, in combination with it, because it works very well. Now, in all cases, these are just 4 examples of how to use the colour of the year in an interesting way. Now, the palettes exist and they're matched. So what's great is you can just pick it up and you can use it. And if you pick from the palette, it will match. Or you can use it as a starting point for experimentation and trying to do something else and trying to do something interesting. And when you put them side by side is when you rediscover, or we hope people rediscover, of course, what we believe, which is that it's very surprising what difference colour and paint can make. So you take the same room, you do it in 4 different styles, you create these completely different rooms, even though it's all based on the same colour, on the same core colour, which it is here. The choice of the different colours around it create these different rooms, and that is the transformative power of paint, plus interior decoration and design to go with it. And so materials are important. So for this year, we've expanded the materials that are available you'll see it in the book and in other places, and to transform different rooms of the house using these 4 individual palettes that I just ran through quickly. So here's the example of using the 4 in, let's say, the living room of the house. Also some examples from another very important room, which is the bedroom, again in the different styles that we've talked about here. This year we've included the kitchen for the first time. We didn't do too much of this in previous years, but we got quite a lot of requests to say, can you show me how this also might work in some of the more functional areas of a house, like kitchen. So we've done this here as well. And of course, that will naturally involve a lot more of the other furnishings and the fittings as well. And also, particular focus we got this year on kids' rooms as well. So this is using the paints, and here of course we've brought a lot more of the graphic elements into the designs, because it's a really nice thing to play with, whether it be stripes or the large circles and dots that you see, and split walls and other things, just to bring a little bit of extra excitement in the graphic sense to kids' rooms areas, but still based on the 4 palettes that you see. And those are all available for inspiration and for thinking about. I know a lot of our professional customers like to show it to their customers, because we are all quite visual people. So sometimes it's not so easy to say what you want, but if you look at a picture, you can say, yeah, that's the one. I want it like that. So that's the other way these materials can be used. If we look at all the colours that we've got over the 4 palettes which I've shown you, then this is the complete selection of colours for this year that we have in the Colour of the Year palette. Now, as ever, there's a combination of more light and neutral colours and more vibrant colours, and it goes across the colour spectrum. And on the left-hand side is the Colour of the Year. Now, what I said earlier on is what tends to happen, and why the Heartwood is quite a good colour to root the interior design is because of its nature of having this 2 sides to it, the pink side and the grey side. When it's paired with neutral colours, it tends to warm them up a little bit, because it brings out its kind of pink nature, which is nice for home, because you're generally trying to achieve a warm atmosphere. When you put vibrant colours next to it, it tends to cool them down a bit, so make them a bit less vibrant and a bit less showy, which is also nice because it brings a bit of unity and harmony to the room. So we think it's a particularly effective colour to root the design of a home in. But like I've said, not here, but we also have examples for schools, for hospitals, for office buildings, for other ways in which you can use the colour of the year in the different palettes that we see. And that's really what the story is for 2018 for Colour Futures. Just to recap, when we went out into the world around us, what do we find? We find people a little bit troubled by the unpredictability, by the uncertainty of the current world, intensified